Hi everyone, my name is David Del Bosco and I am a PhD student at the University of Trento, Italy. Today I will give you an overview of the experimental campaign we conducted with our torsion pendulum to measure the performance of a prototype LISA charge management system inside the flight model replica of the LISA Pathfinder gravitational reference sensor. As you know, isolated objects in space tend to build a positive charges over time. The same will happen to LISA test masses. Cosmic rays and solar energetic particles are the leading causes of this charge accumulation. To make sure that we reach the full LISA sensitivity, the test masses are required to be kept in a range plus or minus 70 millivolts all the time. Therefore, we need a charge management system to control the test mass charge. As we cannot physically ground the test masses, charge management is achieved with photoelectric effect. UV light is shown on the GRS surfaces to create a photocurrent that opposes to the cosmic ray buildup. As you may know, LISA Pathfinder successfully employed low-pressure mercury UV lamps to discharge the test masses. However, in LISA, we would like to move to UV LEDs as the light sources for the charge management system. LEDs bring the following advantages. In the first place, they can be driven in an AC mode, and therefore they can be synchronized with the 100 kHz injection voltage, which biases the test masses for the capacitive readout. Indeed, by setting the phase delay and the duration of the light pulses with respect to the 100 kHz bias, we can look for more flexible and advantageous discharge strategies. Other advantages of the LEDs include weight and volume saving with respect to UV lamps, and an improved robustness and lifetime. In this view graph, I present you the main features of our 4-mass torsion pendulum. Our facility hosts the flight model replica of the LISA Pathfinder gravitational reference sensor. It also hosts a copy of the front-end electronics, which provide the same sensing and actuation signals as LISA Pathfinder. Furthermore, the inertial sensor UV kit, ISUK, that is, the termination of the fiber that carry the UV light for the charge management to the GRS, are in the same position as in LISA Pathfinder. The plot shows the force amplitude spectral density of the pendulum in the frequency band of LISA. The low frequency is dominated by true force disturbance, while the high frequency is dominated by the readout noise. The force sensitivity of our facility at 1 mHz is a factor 8 above the thermal noise, and a factor 140 above the LISA requirement. This sensitivity allows us to perform significant tests of the residual stray forces and to characterize the overall gravitational reverse sensor performance. Here is an overview of the charge management hardware at our laboratory. On top of a copy of the LISA Pathfinder mercury lamp, we have 3 types of LEDs: the Crystal 250, the SETI 240, and the SETI 255. We have 3 devices to measure the light produced by the LEDs: a silicon photodiode, a fast photomultiplier tube to see the shape of the light pulses, which, however, is unfortunately not calibrated. And finally, we have also a spectrometer. You can see the spectrum of the LEDs compared to the one of the mercury lamp in the plot on the right. To drive the LEDs, we have a prototype charge management device produced by the INFN Roma Tor Vergata group. We'll soon start the testing also with the University of Florida TRL4 prototype unit. In this scheme, I will present you how the apparent yield measurements are conducted at our laboratory. The test mass potential is measured by actuating the test mass with the lower X electrodes with a sinusoidal modulation. In this way, the component of the torque acting on the pendulum at the modulation frequency is proportional to the test mass potential. Then, the time series of the test mass potential is recovered with the technique of phase sensitive detection. In the equation below, you can see the definition of apparent yield. The apparent yield is an adimensional quantity. It is defined as the relation between the number of positive charges reaching the test mass per unit time and the number of photons injected in GRS per unit time. With this convention, the apparent yield is positive when electrons leave the test mass. Operatively, the apparent yield is proportional to the time derivative of the test mass potential, normalized by the UV light power injected into the GRS. The apparent yield is commonly displayed as a function of the test mass potential. In this case, the resulting plot is basically the current voltage characteristic of the GRS system. In the graph on the right-hand side, you can see the expected behavior of the apparent yield curves. At the extreme test mass voltages, the curves reach a saturation. This is because at, for example, large positive test mass potential, all photoelectrons emitted by the test mass itself reach the electrode housing. On the other side, at very negative test mass potentials, all photoelectrons emitted by the electrode housing are attracted towards the test mass. We notice also that even if you illuminate with the test mass ISUC, a non-negligible fraction of the light is reflected and hence absorbed by the electrode housing surfaces. This causes a negative apparent yield at very positive test mass potential. Vice versa is true for electrode housing illumination, causing the apparent yield to be positive when the test mass is very negative. The ratio of the saturation currents should correspond more or less to the ratio of the light absorbed by the test mass and the electrode housing, granting that quantum yields of the surfaces are more or less the same. The zeros of the apparent yield curves are called equilibrium positions or equilibrium voltages, and they are independent from the injected UV light power. Let's have a look, for example, at the apparent yield curves measurement for the crystal 250 UV LED in the case of electrode housing illumination. The blue line corresponds to the apparent yield measurement when we illuminate with 100% of the duty cycle of the injection bias. As expected, the equilibrium potential is negative, and the apparent yield at neutral test mass is negative as well, since we are illuminating mainly the electrode housing. The yellow curve corresponds to the pulsed illumination of duration 1 microseconds and 2 microseconds delay with respect to the zero crossing of the 100 kHz injection bias. That is the 10% duty cycle in phase illumination. As you can see, in this case, the equilibrium voltage shifts to more negative values, and the apparent yield at neutral test mass is more negative as well. This makes the CMS more efficient at discharging the test mass. The green curve corresponds to the 10% duty cycle out of phase illumination. In this case, the equilibrium point is positive and the apparent yield is positive as well. This means that we can charge up the test mass just by illuminating the electrode housing with the correct phase. We notice that overall we can regulate the equilibrium voltage to any value in the range minus plus 0.6 volts just by adjusting the phase of the illumination. Adjusting the phase of the light allows also to adjust the apparent yield at neutral test mass. Finally, we can see that the slope of the curves is negative, making the overall charge management system passively stable. This is a summary of the apparent yield curves measured for all LEDs in the case of the 10% duty cycle in phase or out of phase illumination. The behavior is overall what you expect, except for some anomalies due to light power normalization. Indeed, we would expect that LEDs with spectra centered at higher energies, such as the SETI 240, produce saturation currents overall larger than the lower energy LEDs, since a larger fraction of the photons have energy above the work function. This is not always the case. We notice that even in the case of test mass illumination, we can achieve for the out-of-phase 10% duty cycle illumination a negative apparent yield. This is great for the redundancy of the charge management system, as we will be able to discharge the test mass even if the light sources illuminating the electrode housing fail. Even though our work focus has been mainly measuring the apparent yield curves, we are interested in developing some quantitative models to help us interpret and understand the data better. The model I present here is quite simplified, as I assume that all the surfaces are infinite plane parallel sheets, with a voltage barrier delta V across them. Photoelectrons are generated if the incoming photons have energy larger than the work function of the surface. And a Lambert cosine emission law is assumed for the emitted photoelectrons. Finally, only the photoelectrons whose kinetic energy in the direction orthogonal to the emitting surface is larger than the potential barrier contribute to the photocurrent. Although this model is quite simplified, it can reproduce well the equilibrium voltages as a function of the delay from the zero crossing of the 100% injection bias, as you can see in a picture on the right-hand side. To conclude, I hope to have convinced you that using UV LEDs synchronized with the injection bias has many advantages, such as the ability to tune the Toothmass equilibrium voltage and the discharge rates with the phase of the illumination. Furthermore, having a bipolar discharge is an excellent benefit for the redundancy of the CMS system. The future activities that we would like to conduct in our laboratory mainly have to do with understanding better the effect of AC and DC actuation on the discharge performance. We are also investigating the requirements that the GRS and the CMS must satisfy in order to make the continuous discharge mode possible. Another aspect we want to work on is making the 4-mass torsion pendulum a more representative copy of the LISA Pathfinder or LISA sensor by including the caging fingers and by substituting the current UV fiber that bring the light to the GRS with the fiber bundles forecasted for LISA. Finally, we are also working to improve our theoretical models to include the GRS complex geometry. And this will wrap up my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I will see you in the next one. Bye.